quilt peeps. This is Tish from Cotton Candy Quilts in lovely scenic Gaston, Indiana, and this is it. This is the end of Harmony, and we're going to do both block 8 and block 9 because they are both borders. You're going to use all of your pretty piece blocks that you worked so hard on. You did. You worked hard. I did too. And then we're going to piece all of these different borders, including the on-point border, the checkerboard border, which I'm going to give you easier ways to do, and then the two outer borders. And I'm going to give you great tips on doing borders, and it's really important because as a long armor, I find that borders sometimes come in wavy, which means there's too much fabric there. So I'm going to teach you how not to have that happen. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get to this and finish this gorgeous quilt. So I've started laying out my side first borders, and they're on point. All of the first borders that go next to the Lone Star are on point. And sometimes that's a little bit confusing, but I wanted to show you here just a little bit of a trick. So as you can see, I've got a couple of the blocks laid out here. Now I'm going to move this out of the way. And show you, here's the little corner piece. We're going to take this corner piece away and we're going to put this here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera. Oh my gosh, it's a row. Isn't that cool? So pull them apart a little bit so that you can see the rows and sew the rows together. You will always be pressing to the white on each of these, and we're going to make 2 side borders with 4 blocks each. Your big triangles go on the either side of the blocks, and the tinier corner pieces go on each corner. When you're lining up these pieces right here, you want to make it dead even with your block. As a matter of fact, you can leave these off until the end if you'd like and sew the rest of the rows together, because it's easier to get these correct after that, the little end pieces. So we're going to make 2 like that for the sides, so let's get to that and I'll be right back. Okay, I wanted to take a short stop right here and show you what the pieces look like before I put them all together. So as you can see, this is now attached, and this is the left hand square, and it has 1 triangle only on the top. And if you notice here at the bottom, it is lined up and the point just hangs off into the air. These are oversized, and when we're done, we're going to trim them even. The next one, which will go like this, let's see if I can scooch this one way over. And you also notice the little squares aren't on the bottom yet. So the next one will go like this. See how that makes that on point right there? And it has 2 big triangles on it. One of them lines up even on this side, and then at the top it lines up even on the other side. The triangle point hangs off here, and the triangle point hangs off here, and this will go like this. The third one is the same way. Let's line this up again, and I have these arranged exactly like they are in the book. If you don't want to, I'm never going to know. So you line them up however, you put the blocks in whatever order you want to. This one also, it's going to line up to this one. And it also has a triangle at the bottom and a triangle at the top with opposite ends aligned. You can see that this is straight, this is straight, and then the points are hanging off the end. And then our last one up here is going to line up at the bottom like this. Let's scoot this over a little bit. There we go. And it has a triangle on the bottom only, which is lined up square with the point hanging off on this end. So on the left hand side, your big triangle will be at the top, and on the right hand side your big triangle will be at the bottom. So now I'm going to sew these into rows into one piece before I add those end caps, because it'll make it easier for me to get those end caps, those end triangles even. Be right back. Okay, I have the strip sewn together except for the end pieces. And a little tip, I always sew with the block up. So when this is folded this way, I want to sew with this block up. And the reason why is I worked really hard for those points, didn't you? And I want to hit them every time. So I sew with the block up so that I can see the points and hit them exactly. You will notice when you go to put rows together, so like right here's a row, let me fold it back. The block is up and then the block is underneath. I actually sew halfway, a little bit more, 1/4 inch or so, and then I flip it over and sew with the block up again, back the other way. That way I've hit all my points. So now I want to put those end pieces on, and the best way to do that is to mark the center of your end piece and line it up with the center of your block. And then you should have pretty much equal triangles hanging out on either side here. So I'm going to put the end pieces on all four, 2 here and 2 on the other end, and then I'm going to trim it to the size given in the book. Be careful when you trim. These are oversized, but you want to make sure and leave a good 1/4 inch on either side to make sure that when you put this together, you don't sew over the points here. Okay, so let's make 2 of these and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so I have both of my side borders made, and I have laid them on top of each other with, I think this is block 2 on the left hand side, and you want to do that to both so that when you put these borders on, the blocks follow each other all the way around. So we need to add a strip onto each of these, and if you notice, I have pins in both my strip and my border. The reason why is because we want to be able to line this up so that it doesn't pucker and it's exactly right. So to do that, I have marked the center and halfway between the edge and the center of both the strip and the border. And I'm going to line those pins up and pin this together so that all of those pins line up, and I know that the border will not have any puckers in it. So let's go ahead and do that to both of these. Okay, now that we have the side borders done, we're going to be working on the top and bottom border, and there's several steps to this because the top border has more border and it's all pieced than the side borders do, so that your quilt is longer than it is wide. So the only difference that we're going to start with, the block one, with all of the blocks that we made 1 through 5, and the only difference that we're doing is instead of just having 4 blocks, it's going to have 6, and block number 5 goes on each end. So we're going to assemble this in exactly the same way we did before and trim it down. So let's get going on this. Okay, I have this made and measured and cut to the size that's in the booklet. And now we need to add one more piece to this before we head on to the checkerboard. To make it even with the other piece, we're going to have to add this shorter piece onto the end, and that means that all of your blocks will be framed out. So let's put one of these strips on each end and then make another one just like this. We need 2. Okay, I've made both of my top and bottom borders with the diagonal set, with the on point set. And when we did the side borders, we added a white strip, a white hatching strip onto one side, but we're not going to do that with the top and bottom, so don't attach it. In the directions, she has you cut a whole bunch of little 2.5-inch squares, and I'm just not much for that. So when I cut my white hatching, I cut it into strips in the piece that she says to take the remainder from. And then I cut a strip of each of my fabrics the same size as my white hatching top and bottom, so they're about the same size. And we'll put those right sides together, and we're going to make this checkerboard border by strip piecing, cross-cutting, and then putting it back together to make 4 patches. So if you need a refresher on 4 patches, I think we did that in the very first block. So you can go back and check that, but I'm going to chain these through because I can do that a whole lot faster than I can cut a whole bunch of squares. So it cuts my cutting time actually in half. So I'm going to put these all together in strips, and I'm going to press to the colored section, the colored fabric, not the white hatching, in every set. And then I'm going to mix them up and put them back together. So each strip has a white and a color, and then I'm going to cut them apart, and then you mix them up so that you have a 4 patch with a white and a color, and it can be different colors as much as you want to mix them up. So let's get to this. This is like fun. Hey, look at all those strips. Isn't that fun? Oh my gosh, and it doesn't hardly take any time at all. So I want to cross cut these into the right size. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to take 2 of them randomly and put them together. Now I'm not going to go ahead and sew them into 4 patches like this, because I don't want all the 4 patches paired up the same every time. But it'll cut my cutting in half if I just do that and put 2 pieces together. And as you can see, the seam goes opposite, so the colors are on opposite sides, and that makes it nice and straight. Make sure and measure from your seam, not your end or your bottom. Trim off even, and then cut your pieces, mix them all up, and make a bunch of 4 patches. So here's a big pile of my 4 patches, and I just wanted to say that after I make a couple of them, I check to make sure that it measures the right size according to the pattern booklet. If it doesn't, now is the time to correct how you're sewing, because these have to exactly match the size of your border. So if you don't get this to be the exact size of your pattern, you're going to end up with problems, and it's a whole lot easier unsewing 5 than it is, I think there's 40. I think there's 20 on each side. So measure now to make sure that you're getting the correct size with your 4 patches, and then after you get your 4 patches done, you're going to arrange them in a place, in a design that's pleasing for you, and sew them into 2 long strips, and those strips should equal the same length as the first borders that we worked on with the diagonal set. Okay, I have my checkerboards made. I have 2 of these made. Now we're going to attach a strip onto the top and the bottom, and you want to put these strips together straight. Bias, when you turn it sideways and sew across the bias, is reserved for when you do binding, because you want to get rid of the bulk that's in the binding, so it doesn't form a lump right there. But when you put borders together, always, always, always straight, straight, straight. If you do it bias, join, then you just end up with problems. So I have verified that this strip equals exactly the measurement that it should, and these are the same measurement, so I'm going to sew 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom, and I'm going to make 2 of those. Just like we've been doing before, you're going to fold each border in half, and you're going to mark the half, and you're going to match that, and then you're going to fold into the center and mark the quarters, and match those so that it's even. Never sew down a long strip and whack it off, because what happens is your machine will ruffle a little bit as it goes, and your borders will get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, like Ruffles potato chips. So match your borders, pin your borders, every single border on every single quilt. Measure, measure, measure. Okay, I have my strips sewn on, so here is one of my checkerboard pieces, border pieces, and here is my on point border piece. And I want to join these two together. So I want you to arrange it. If you're making the blocks, go the same on every side like it shows in the book. I want you to arrange it this way. You have your end block, which is the one with the floral, but your second block should be this one here. And if your second block is this one here, second from the left, then when you put this together, it is going to chase each other all the way around your quilt. So you won't have them stacked up with the same block close to the same block. For both the top and bottom, you want to arrange it the same way. Don't flip this upside down. You want it just like this, with this block being the second one from the left. So I am going to pin these together, mark the centers, mark the quarters, and then pin these together. And I want to sew from this piece with this piece up so that I can see my points as I go and I don't trump over my points. So let's get those together, and that's the last part of this block. But we're going to continue on with this video with the attaching of the borders to your quilt, and then finish with the last two borders. So let's get this sewn, and I'll be back shortly. So it's time to sew the side borders on. So you have two that are the same size as your center square. Here's our Lone Star, right? So we're going to choose two sides, opposite sides, and sew the shorter borders on. You want to mark the center of your Lone Star, the center of your border, and halfway in between the center and the edge of both your Lone Star and your border, and match all of those up. And that strip that we sewed on goes to the outside, so you're actually sewing the raw edge of your border to the raw edge of your Lone Star. So let's get those sewed on. Well, now that we have the sides on, we're ready to add the top and bottom, and I'm going to see if I can struggle this around for you. So there is my little strip of top. Well, it's not really very little because it's got the checkerboard on the top too. And the rest of the quilt with our sides on, and you can see that these are going to match up. So your diagonal border goes next to the quilt, the checkerboard goes away from that, and when you fold over to pin it together, and again I'm going to sew from this strip with the multiple blocks on it so that I can match points. You are going to match this point to this point, and you're going to match this little border that we put on. This is our big strip with the little border, and then this is our side strip with the border across the top, and those will match as well. So mark your centers, mark your quarters, match those up and pin together, and let's put the top and bottom on. Alright, we are ready for the first of the plain non-pieced borders, which is the Aqua on Point. And if you have been measuring and squaring every single time, you should be able to cut these exactly the size the pattern says to be able to hook it on. But it never hurts to lay your quilt out and measure to make sure that you're on the same page and your measurements are equal. Anytime you put on a border, you always cut the border to the correct length. You mark the center. You mark the center of your quilt, you mark a quarter by just folding the end into the center to find the quarter on each side and the ends, and you pin, 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 pin. Pins are your friends. Pins are your friends. So you want to put a border on each side, cut exactly to the length that you need. We'll do the side borders first, then the top. Then we'll cut the main floral to the correct size, and we'll put on the sides and then the top, and then we're ready to quilt.